Jaxsyn, could you tell us a little bit about who you are?
I identify as a two-spirited man. I am biromantic asexual, and I'm also 19 years old. I'm a poet. I've done a few poetry readings, poetry slams, and I am also an artist in beadwork, in drawing, in embroidery, anything artistic I like. I'm an after-school teacher, so I work with children, and that's a pretty fun job.
In your own words, any other words you would use to describe your identity or experience, such as systems or outside of systems or anything like that?
I have been houseless on and off my whole childhood until I turned 18. I was also raised by my grandparents, and my Unchi grandmother and my Lala are both Lakota. So I was raised traditionally in that aspect. And at the time, there wasn't really any representation for LGBTQ. And if there was any, my grandparents were very quick to change the channel. When I first started to explore my identity, um, I found the term non-binary, which was something I learned by word of mouth. And at the time, it was the only thing I could find that resonated with me. So I
Mm.
started going by they, them. I eventually told my mother at 13, and she used the pronouns for 2 hours before she forgot about it.
Mm.
And when it was brought up with my grandparents and the rest of my family on my gender being a mistake, um, the response was, creator doesn't make mistakes.
Mm.
And anytime after that I tried to bring it up, I was met with the same answer, or where is this coming from? I bet it's your friends. They're making you confused.
Mhm.
I was always confused, misled, in a phase, but never curious and insecure and scared because I was questioning my identity.
So, did anyone offer services or supports to help your family in accepting your identity? And would you have been open to receiving those services?
There was one person who offered me services and support to help educate my family and helping me find a safe space after I came out. Her name is Bailey Dansby, and at the time, I was very reluctant to accept her services. Um, there was times where I flaked her out or ignored her, but she just never gave up on me and stayed present in my life. And after a while, I caved and accepted her help, and I'm very glad I did because that led to my family being able to be educated, and me being in the apartment that I am now.
Could you just say a little bit more about Bailey's services? Was this through child welfare? Was it a community support center or what kind of service?
So Bailey is a part of the police force. She's non-uniform and non-sworn, and she's on a task force, the youth task force, and she's basically like a social worker, and she
Okay.
helps teens who have run away or teens in unsafe homes or just teens in general. I was one of the teens that she was linked with because of my history, being
Okay.
houseless and being in the closet.
Did people have conversations with you about your identity? And if so, how was it handled?
Aside from my family, people who trying to have conversations with me, they were pretty. It was handled pretty well. They were pretty respectful. They knew what no meant, or I don't want to answer that. And
Mm.
but my family didn't really understand that. After I came out, like publicly, I had posted it on Facebook and Instagram, and anytime I was meeting with a family member, I told them, "Hey, I go by Jaxsyn now."
Mm.
And if that was done in front of family, they were very like
Mm.
almost embarrassed. And I would tell them like, "Hey, I would really appreciate it if you corrected people when they get my pronouns and name wrong." And they said, "I can't do that. That's too embarrassing."
Mm.
And so that's how I felt like it was handled. They felt embarrassed to talk about it, to correct themselves about it.
What did people do to affirm your identity?
They used my pronouns and my name. If they accidentally said, like, she, her, or my dead name, they were quick to apologize and correct themselves, even in front of a crowd. If they had questions, they were respectful and patient, accepting when I said no to a question. They were proud to have me as a friend or a nephew or a cousin instead of embarrassed.
How has other aspects of your identity, such as racial, cultural, religious, or other aspects of identity, impacted your gender identity? So this might mean internally, as in how you see yourself, or even externally, how the world sort of saw you.
My family is very immersed into the Lakota culture, so we've had ceremonies. And before I came out, I had a Lakota name, which was Wakuhali, which is board woman. And at the time I came out, and in ceremony, my family members would still use the name Wakuhali. And it was hard because I knew what it meant. I knew the translation. And being called Wakuhali in ceremony was very hard for me. And it often brought conflict in me. Like, if this Lakota way of living was going to work for me, if it was going to accept me or protect me in a way. And that was really scary and sad to think of because I love my way of life. I love being Lakota and indigenous. And at some point, I talked to a few elders about it, and that's when I began to label myself as two-spirited because they told me that I could still have my Lakota name and then be also given another Lakota name to represent my masculine side. And in ceremony, I'll just be this person. And Tugashila is the only one who can see me and feel me and know me. And I came to accept that, even though my family might still do that. I know Tugashila will have my back in some way or another. There's been instances where I think they proved that. During one of our ceremonies, I had to give up sun dancing because I was transgender and the role that I was dancing in was meant for a woman. And before I left, another fellow sun dancer came up to me and told me that there had been two-spirited people in my position before and that I could still be Jaxsyn and still help the people in this position. And that was a turning point for me as well, to be able to still be in this culture and way of life. It was because of moments like that, being affirmed and accepted.
Have you been asked what you want and need to feel supported in your identity?
Yes, I'll mention Bailey again because Bailey has been a major part in my socially transitioning and just me transitioning into adult in general. And Bailey often had conversations with me like that, like, do you want to move out? Do you want to stay? Like, what's going to happen? And coming out, and do you want testosterone? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And it was very affirming to talk to her about it because I knew that if it was Bailey helping me, it was going to get done. That I had total, complete faith in Bailey. And she's just been a real big support in my life.
Any other folks that you feel like have asked what you want and need and supported your identity? I mean, it's okay if Bailey's the person, that's all right.
Oh, my friends. My friends have been a big part. I've been out to them since 6th grade. They were the ones who I created my name with and decided that I was he, him. And they immediately accepted me. They didn't question me. They just said, okay, yeah, you're no longer dead name. You're Jaxsyn now. And they used it at school. They made sure not to use it in front of my parents. And they just, anytime I had like, oh guys, guess what? I'm gonna start testosterone. They were super excited for me.
If socially or medically transitioning, were you allowed to take the lead in that process, or did adults in your life make assumptions about what your transition might look like?
Yep, I have full control over my transition medically and socially. Like, they told me, like, you need to wait. I don't think you're ready for this. I really need you to think about it. And I understand the concern, but I've thought about it. Like, my whole teenage years. And
Yeah.
I'm revealing it to you this past year. And at some point I just had to just do it myself. And like I still haven't told my family that I'm gonna start testosterone, because I knew that's gonna spark a big conversation of whether or not I'm ready, of whether or not I'm going to regret it, and how they think I can do it or go through with it. And and that's why I don't really include them in my medical decisions anymore.
When you raise a really important point that folks might forget is that a lot of young people aren't just rushing into this decision. You've been spending years thinking about it. Family is just now thinking about it because you're finally telling them, but you've been thinking about it. Yeah. Let's talk about safety. During your experience, either in care, in systems, or being served by systems, were there people you felt like you could trust?
So in this, I answered it about my time in Regional West,
Mhm.
and I went 2 times. The first time I went by my dead name.
Mhm.
And the second time I went, I decided, you know, whatever, I'll just go as Jaxsyn. Whatever happens, if my grandma comes in and she sees my cup, or she somehow sees my
Can I
chart.
ask, sorry, can I ask what Regional West is?
Regional West here in Rapid City, South Dakota, is the behavioral hospital. So
Okay.
I was showing signs of suicidal thoughts. So that's why I went to
Mhm.
the regional. And what do you call it? I went there, and I was around 17 at the time. And I told them that I went by Jaxsyn and I would see him because I wanted to be comfortable this time. And they were very accommodating. They even had me on the boys' side of the dorm or the rooms with another transgender man. And the experience was really nice. They changed my name on my cup to Jaxsyn. They changed my folder to Jaxsyn. In my medical records, it said Jaxsyn, he, him. And the staff are really good on using pronouns. And I told them that, hey, I wasn't up to my family yet. And they were
Mhm.
very secure on that. When they were on the phone, they used my dead name, she, her. When family came to visit, same thing. And so I felt very supported in that environment.
Any other places that you felt safe or you felt like you could be fully authentic?
Probably with the youth task force, because Bailey isn't the only one on that team that I know. I know the whole team.
Mhm.
And when I wasn't out to my parents, I was out to them. And I had my own name tag they had given me, and it said Jaxsyn. And I
Yeah.
had a little desk, and I was able to do my schoolwork. And I was there with them from like 8 to 5. So I spent like 10 hours with these people. And they
Yeah.
were just amazing and accepting. And anytime I had news, they always asked how they could help or how they could support me. And I felt like I could come with them to it with anything, and they'd help me figure it out.
Have you filed a grievance for any instances of mistreatment on the basis of your gender identity, gender expression, or sexual orientation? And if so, what came of that process?
I don't know if I would call it a grievance, but there was a time when I was graduating this program called COI, and it's
Mhm.
called Connecting with Our Youth. And it's a program for Indigenous teens from 13 to, I think, 24. And these group of koi mentors, they take these kids and take them out to pick choke cherries, make traditional foods, traditional clothes, take them to powwows, hand games, and stuff like that. And I had graduated because I had I had moved out. I had a job, and so in their eyes, I didn't need the program anymore.
Mhm.
And so at my graduation, they gave me a certificate, and when I looked at it, I burst into tears because it said Wakmuhawi, and this
Mhm.
reward is presented to Wakmuhawi. And they had given me a plume, which is a feather given to women.
Mhm.
And I was well out by then. I was like 5 months into being 18 in Jackson publicly. And they had known
Yeah.
even before I came out, because I came out to everyone in that team. And I had my grandparents and I had my uncle, and they were singing, and I was crying. And they thought I was crying because I was, sad I was leaving, or excited or happy. And I texted Bailey about it. I sent her a picture of everything, and I was like, I feel so unseen right now. I feel so unheard right now because, like, I can't even, like, I don't even want to accept this because it's just, I don't, and I was freaking out. And Bailey was able to call the head mentor, and they got me a new certificate, and they had promised to give me a feather instead of the plume, which was given, feathers are given to men.
That's helpful to hear though, because I think it's really powerful that you're stating, I didn't feel seen. And that's not a hard thing to do for most people. We all, I think, want to feel seen, and they had all the information they needed to do that. But also that you had a person you could call to just even tell, and that person knew what they could use in their power to change it. So it doesn't erase what happened, but it's a really powerful story of just like stepping up for someone and getting what you totally deserve. So I'm glad that Bailey was able to help that and that you let Bailey know. So. If you could wave a magic wand, what recommendations might you have for folks who serve young people like yourself, be it in systems or otherwise, that you think should either continue, that were helpful, things that should change, or new things that should start happening?
I definitely think being educated, like LGBTQIs, especially educators, because I have students who come up to me asking me like, "Oh, hey, this girl likes me, but I don't know what to do," and
Sure.
I have to respond with, "I'm not qualified to answer that. You need to talk to your parents about that." I feel like guidance in that area would be very helpful and help kids be able to understand and help explore their identity. Yeah, definitely access to healthcare, because especially with all these trans bills that are passing right now, it's very scary. Like, I live in the state of South Dakota where they just passed a bill of minor trans or non-binary people can't get gender affirming care under the age of 18. And reading that, I was very like frustrated and like, but also like, oh my God, I just made the mark. Like, I could get gender affirming care because I turned 18 when this bill was passed. But my sibling who's non-binary can't get gender affirming care because they're 16. And it'd be helpful if we were able to do like research on these bills that they're trying to pass, because they hide a lot in the bills because they're so long and so boring. So people like dip out on the first few sections, but the rest of the sections are very important to how the bill is going to be done. And services, I think those services need to be more out there, because I only found my Bailey or my services through luck or through word of mouth, because I was working with another program and she had referred me over to Bailey.
Did you work with an organization, or were you referred to services that were affirming, and how so?
Well, I'm in a program right now called New Alternatives, and it's in Rapid City, South Dakota. And I'm going to say a transitional living program. So essentially it's from 18 to 21. And you sign up, and if you get accepted, then you get an apartment. And it's a 2-bedroom apartment, and you share the other room with a roommate. And they're very good on gender affirming. Like, if you say your pronouns are he, him, they will use he, him. They will use Jaxsyn. And they also help with like medical, like they have an on-site nurse, and she takes you to doctor's appointments, sets up doctor's appointments. If you don't know how to refill your meds, she helps you. And we also have a social worker who helps you, like, file your taxes, sign up for EBT, and at the time get a car or get a place. And you pay rent. The rent is like $350, but it goes into an escrow savings account. And so the longer you live here, the more money is saving up. So you could get a car, so you could do the down payment on a place. And they help you get a job. They help you transport you to your job. And it's a really good program that's helped me a lot in the past year.
Did you experience any organizations that claimed to be affirming but in practice were not, and how so?
This program that I was living in before, they had check-in cards, so like you had to scan the card when you came in. And I told them I was going by Jaxsyn, and they accommodated that. They put Jaxsyn Claymore, but the staff there didn't really know. So I scanned in my card, and they'd be like, oh, hey, girly, or hey, girl, or hey, miss so-and-so. And it was very like, and I correct them and be like, oh, I'm not a man. I'm not a C. I'm not a girl. But they just didn't seem to grasp it. And they just kept misgendering me. And I tried to talk to, at the time, my caseworker about it. And she was like, oh, yeah, I'll talk to them. And then it just kept continuing. And I understand. I kind of understood because it was a big program, so they have a lot of staff. But I wish they had something like on there to show he, him pronouns, because they were just very quick to just be like, oh, hey, girl. And I'd be caught up.
So I'm just curious if you have any other thoughts about sort of the impact the bills, both in your state and just nationally, have had on you, or you and your friends, just sort of seeing and hearing everything that's going on. How is that feeling for you?
It was very unreal because I was super shocked, and I was like, do they not even they don't, this just proved that they didn't really care about us. The more I found out the bills being passed in other states, that was going through my head. That Michael Jackson song, all I want to say is that they didn't really care about us. That was going through my head repeatedly. That's what it felt like. It felt like they didn't care about us. It felt like that they thought we were just a phase, that we were just a phase that was eventually going to phase out, and we were going to regret it, and we were going to sue, and we were going to, and it was very frustrating to see all that, and very sad because I've talked to people about it, and they'd have a smile on their face and they just go, yeah, I heard about the bill passing, and it was just a really, really sad day for when the bill passed. And the other bills that they're trying to pass, I don't know if you know, but they're also trying to overturn ICWA, which is the Indigenous Child Welfare Act, and it's what keep our children safe from being taken. And they're trying to overturn it, and it's a very scary thing, making me nervous because I have siblings who are protected by ICWA.
Right.
I feel like it just needs to be, like you said, it needs to be talked more, because the people that I've talked to about it, they're like, what's ICWA? What's that?
Right.
What does that do? And or what do you mean? What bills that pass? What do you mean? And they're very sneaky, And I feel like it just needs to be brought up more, word of mouth and stuff, because it is important. And if we don't speak up on it now, then our children are at risk.
I wonder if you just have any sort of final words of hope or advice, particularly for other queer and trans young people who might watch this.
I say if you have any vices like art or even poetry or even just anything that counts as to express yourself, and if you have strong feelings about these bills being passed, and to do it. If you want to make a poem about how the bills are being passed and how it's unfair, do it. If you want to share that poem, I say do it. If you want to share your artwork, do it, because then that brings attention to the situation. And that in itself is letting everyone know what's happening, and it's bringing up the conversation, and it's not letting it be erased or forgotten or talked over.